Good evening. My name is Kelly Callender, and tonight we're going to be discussing Vladimir Lenin, who was a communist leader in Russia, and his contributions to communism and how you might see some of them still today. Lenin was born into a middle-class family in the 1870s, and during the time that he was about to go to school, his older brother was executed by the Russian government for plotting to kill the Tsar. Lenin went to Kazan University, however, he was expelled after a couple years because he was involved in a student demonstration group. During the time that Lenin was growing up and going to school, Russia was facing its own industrial revolution. Factories were popping up, and because they were so new, governments and monarchies hadn't yet established rules as to how these factories can function. Therefore, it was left up to the owners to decide how long the factory would run and how long people would be working and under what conditions. Lenin immersed himself in some radical political literature, one of which is titled What is to be Done? In the novel, the main character is somebody who exercises extreme self-discipline and single-minded focus on political revolution. It glorified using political action to exert revolution. Lenin also became a qualified lawyer. However, due to his previous disturbances with the government, he was limited to being a lawyer's assistant. He did this for a couple years before quitting his job and associating himself with a group of other radical thinkers who all thought alike with Marxist ideas. Marxists believed that a society would go through a series of inevitable changes that would result in communism. They believed that industrial workers would revolt against the capitalists, and that capitalism would transform into socialism, putting the industries in the hands of the government, and eventually the government would dissipate and it would leave the control of the industry into the hands of the people, which would then be a classless society, which is also known as communism. World War I angered the Marxists because it was believed to be a war based on capital greed to gain more wealth. Lenin called for an end for Russian involvement in World War I and advocated for people to have peace, bread, and land. These ideas helped Lenin and the Bolshevik Party take over the Russian provisional government. Lenin became the first communist dictator in Russia. He did things such as nationalizing all the industries, taking land from the wealthy and redistributing it among the poor. He limited worker hours to 8 hours a day and 40 hours a week, and he provided free education to the public. However, he also did things such as he banned all newspapers that did not speak in support of the government as a way to restrict any political oppression to him. Finally, it's important to understand what of Lenin's communist ideas do and don't work in modern-day American society. Some of Lenin's communist ideas that do work in modern America are things such as free public education. And while this exists, our government does not restrict the establishment of private schools. Another example is workers' rights. America, though, did face its own industrial revolution, which forced it to create its own worker protection laws through the government. Some of Lenin's communist ideas that do not work in America are things such as nationalizing industries. In America, we strive to have little government involvement in our markets. However, our governments do step in when we see a monopoly over a certain product. This is seen as too controlling over the people and is banned. Another example that does not work is Lenin's idea to restrict news. In America, we have the First Amendment, which is our protection of free speech, and this would highly violate it.